In today's episode of the podcast, we are speaking with Alaina Wis. Alaina is such a phenomenal voice talent. She has done everything from commercials to animation to explainers to video games about a train. Who wants to kill you? Really, look it up. Choo Choo Charles. I'm going to be playing it at some point as well. But Elena's always been just such a fountain of knowledge and experience. She has been in this industry for over 8 years, longest tenure so far of the people that I've had the opportunity to interview. And she joins us to just sort of share a little bit of how she got started, what she has been doing to stay motivated and moving forward, and kind of the trainings that got her to where she is now. And I just enjoy so much that the people who I'm bringing in here just have such a wealth of knowledge, experiences. I hope you're beginning to see the landscape that is voiceover has no set path of getting into it. Elena's going to talk a bit about the things that were tough, the things that were easier, and the whole collective picture that it takes to become this top-notch talent, which she very much is. So I hope you get as much out of this conversation as I did getting to be part of it, and here she is. I'm just kind of winging it. Alaina, hello! Welcome to this little slice of chaos that I have done. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with me.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Andrew. I'm very excited. You were just such a positive voice, not to borrow branding from Miss Gina Scarpa, but you are in our group and just in the voiceover community. So I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, I appreciate that. And you were someone who, I was very excited to have here because the glam, the posh, the cool background, the lights, the following you on Instagram, seeing you are, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the word, but total pop star level of whenever I see your branding, it's just so fun. And I'm like, man, this is like some T Swift energy going here, and I love it. I'm here
Oh,
for it.
wait, I can I steal that for my branding, like the pop star of voiceover? Like I think I love that too much and I might need to use it somehow.
Absolutely. It is all yours. This is no stealing. I gift you this because you are an absolute rock star, and I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, I love that. You know what? It's like if you're gonna be in a little box, four wall box for 8 hours a day, and you can't get sunshine, then like hang some twinkly lights and just vibe
Oh,
because how
yeah.
else are we gonna, keep our dopamine up during the day?
I actually, your booth was the biggest, not the biggest, but one of those pieces that motivated me to go through a panic and get this space. I do, unfortunately, to a degree, have windows here, but also fortunately, because I get to see the frickin' sun. Because yeah,
Yeah.
sitting in the tiny closet by myself was draining a bit. So yeah,
Yeah. I actually
besides,
I so I have a window in my booth and there actually is a window. This is a room within a room. My booth is sort of like boothception. It's got we built a room inside a bedroom. And so there is actually a window to the outside world, but right on the other side of that window, probably like 8 feet away, is just another brick building. So it really doesn't get any sun.
yeah,
So we had to, we had to improvise.
it's a lovely view of building.
Exactly. Yeah. What more could you want?
And as I look to my right, I'm like, yeah, no, that's true, because I see my neighbor's house from mine. I see some sky, but yeah.
You're getting some good sunlight though, and I think that's important. It probably keeps your like energy levels up too.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. I've felt that so far. So I wanted to just sort of give a lay of the land. You are a voiceover actor, and I love seeing your updates every LinkedIn post, Instagram post, all of the work you're doing, because it is incredibly notable, incredibly fantastic. So I'm curious where the roots began. Let's just tell me about you, Alaina. I know a lot, but our listeners might not.
Sure. So I, like many people, I think working in voiceover, have a theater background. I did the whole BFA musical theater path. My goal was to be a full-time stage performer, and I did that for a while. I went to school in Philadelphia, moved back to Chicago where my family is, and I started working in the Chicago theater market. And at the same time, a friend of mine said, this sounds so horrifying to like to say now, but it was like, she was like, have you ever thought about getting on Fiverr and like working as a voice actor? And at the time I was like, I don't know anything about that. Totally, let's do it. And so, by the way, like, caveat, no shade to actors who are working on Fiverr, because like that is where I started, and I'm like not I'm not hiding that at all.
Yeah.
But I definitely was. The thing that's horrifying is I was charging $5 at the time because I didn't know anything. I didn't even realize that voiceover was an industry in and of itself, which
Hmm.
is just crazy to admit now because it's like my whole life now. But at the time, I didn't know about GVAA. I didn't know anything. I just was like, I already have a degree in acting. I don't need to get coaching. I already know all the things I need to know. How different is it talking into a mic versus being on stage? It's all the same. So anyway, I did that sort of on the side experimentally, no coaching, no pro demos, no nothing. And then I ended up booking Hong Kong Disneyland and going to work there for what ended up being 2 years, and just kind of taking a pause from voiceover while I was over there. And when I came back, I sort of had this realization like, wait a minute, I've just been paid to be a full-time performer, to be a full-time actor. I don't think I want to go back to having a million side jobs and trying to piecemeal my existence together. I think I want to try this voiceover thing like for real, for real. So that's when
Inspired
I
by
sort of,
Disney?
well, yeah, inspired by sort of the vote of confidence that the Walt Disney
Hmm.
Company had in me to be like, yeah, you are worth a full-time performer's salary. And so when I came back, I used to have this job at a tea shop, and my boss was so kind, and she was like, whenever you want to come back, the door's always open. And I was like, kind as that is, I don't think I want to do that anymore. I think I just want to be an actor. So I was able to, stay with my parents for a little while I got my business on its feet, and that's when I really started to kick things into high gear and put a lot of resources into voiceover, and started realizing, wait a minute, this is a faster and more enjoyable way of making a living than all of the other side jobs I was doing, and that's when I was able to go full time. And kind of the rest is history. I'm still pursuing those other things. I'm still auditioning selectively for theater. I'm just now getting into on camera, but voiceover is my bread and butter, my day-to-day life now. So,
Wow. So there's so much in that I could pick apart because it's like I knew you worked at Disney and I believe I also knew it was the Hong Kong one, but that is such a like I don't know cuz you still visit Disney quite regularly, right?
I do.
And I see those posts of you just like in front of castles and stuff and I'm like, "Oh, that is it's like I don't know, it's a dream to see like getting something that brings you so much joy that you get to partner with and play with and experience so much is just so fun. I'm curious, how has your past BFA theater training getting into this? You were like, I don't know that I'll need like what did it translate as perfectly as you were hoping?
You mean like, did the BFA training suffice for getting into voiceover?
Yeah, because you mentioned that it was like you were like, I it's just getting behind a mic. How hard could it be?
Yeah.
Was it that?
No, looking back at the work that I used to do when I first started, and I guess it would be 2015 when I graduated college, I was so horrible. I think I probably deserved to be making $4 out of $5 on every job that I was doing. I was not good. I was doing what I thought voiceover sounded like. I was like screaming into the mic. I don't know why. I could not tell you why. And I didn't even know that I was doing that because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I never sought any feedback for it. And so I got booked occasionally. I was working those really, really low budget jobs. I
Hmm.
I wasn't I wasn't trying to be irreverent or disrespectful of the industry. I just didn't know. I didn't know there was a standard. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And I was really not plugged in. I really haven't been plugged into any community until this year when, getting invited to the Scrappy VO Discord. I've really kind of been working solo this whole time. And, I did end up needing to get coaching and needing to get demos when I decided to try to make it my full-time hustle. Um, because I was not understanding where the disconnect was. And now looking back, not that I regret trying to climb the mountain by myself, because I think I needed to go through that to understand the value of feedback and coaching and
Mm-hmm.
community. But I also do think that I could have saved myself a lot of time and frustration if I had just humbled myself a little sooner and gone,
Mm.
okay, I wonder why this isn't working, or I wonder why agents don't want to pay attention to me, or I wonder why, when I talk to other professionals in the field, they're saying no one's going to take me seriously and things like that.
I think those are great things to call out because so I'm in a point this year where I'm actively like, this is the year I need to start getting coaching. Not that I at any point thought that because I didn't have the background, like I didn't have the BFA, I didn't do theater in when I was a kid. This is something like I stepped in. This is like, yeah, sure, I want to try this, and I knew there was a lot of training I needed, but it's like I want that coaching because uh, there are times where I'm like, I'm being my real person in this read, and I'm like, somebody will listen to it and be like, no, that sounded fake, bro. Like that's so phony, and I'm like, what?
Yeah,
But that was
you know,
me.
I totally get it. And I think some of us have larger than life personalities. I know that my default way of speaking is more animated and melodic than the average real person blue collar sound. So I do want to just sort of clarify something that I said earlier, which is that going through the BFA program was very valuable and important for my voiceover career because I had those foundational acting skills, and that
Mm,
was incredibly important. If you're coming into voiceover without that background, then you have to make up for that somewhere. You have to learn
yeah.
how to be an actor and then how to translate it to the mic. So I had half of the equation. I don't want to discount that. I had the acting. I didn't know how to use it for this medium, and I took it for granted that I did know because I was already an actor. And it's a completely different beast. Those foundational skills are still really important, but I think one thing that maybe non-actors have over actors is that real person thing. Like,
Mm,
I think it's a lot easier to just know who you are and just drop in and be yourself and not have to deal with almost the burden of not undoing the training that you had, but sort of overriding the acting training and going, okay, but how would I say this if I were just a person working at CVS? And maybe that is another facet of acting. Like maybe my character is a person who works at CVS.
yeah.
Um, but I know like when I started to try to make the connection between that BFA musical theater training and being a real person, caring less, just living my life as a conversational VO. There was a little bit of like, well, what the heck did I go to school for if everybody wants me to be a non-actor, non-polished,
Yeah.
non-performer?
You want me
So
to be a real
it
person? I was trained to not be this real person.
right, like why did I go to school? I could have just stayed a real person. But so I've had to work on my thought patterns to understand and to not be resentful of any of that and
Mm,
to just go, okay, maybe, like I said, like maybe this is acting still. But I'm acting in the role of a person who has not done voiceover and has not gone to a BFA musical theater program.
yes. It gives me a visual in my mind. Like I'm just imagining you're working on this very complicated puzzle over here that's going to have this gorgeous tapestry on it, and then suddenly this other one comes over here and you're going to do it as well. But when you put the two together, it makes this really big picture. Both are beautiful pictures in and of themselves. And when they come together, they make just a big visual of awesome. And I feel like so much of this business has, as you build this one over here and then build this, like suddenly this big, cool picture is coming together. And that's just, I don't know. I'm excited for myself to, I've been trying to get more of those acting trainings through improv classes and other things and random opportunities. But hearing that from you, who like those pieces and how they do come together, like finding the way that they interlock and like this puzzle needs to connect to this puzzle. How do I do that? It's not always easy to find that the missing pieces between the two.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think this is something that I've realized when, I started taking on-camera acting classes about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago now, during the pandemic, because I realized, hey, I've never done that. That would be something different, and I feel really insecure whenever I do get on-camera opportunities. What do I do with my hands? What do I do with my body? I feel like I'm too big. I'm too theater.
Yeah.
And there was a moment there was, a period of a couple months where I really felt foolish because I was like, all I know how to do is theater, and these two things feel so at odds with each other, and they're just fighting all the time. And then as I got more comfortable in front of the camera, now it's like I understand how the theater thing informed this, and also it's its own entity and it's its
Mm.
own medium. Same thing with voiceover. At first it was like, I only know how to project to the back of the room. And it's like, that's not needed right now. There are some things that overlap, but it's a completely different medium. And at the same time, it does all form one big tapestry. These things
Mm.
are all related, but they're all just like slightly different shades, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's absolutely comes from a place of wisdom and experience. That's, yeah, great to hear. So tell me, what does winging it mean to you? What has winging it mean to you? Because the whole concept of I don't know, we're kind of figuring things out as we go every single day. What have you run into opportunities where you felt like you were winging it?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. I think definitely the beginning part of my career, like I said before, was all winging it. It was like, and not maybe in a good way. It was more winging it like out of stubbornness and thinking, I don't need feedback. I don't need, and I think underneath that was a fear that I was going to be told that I suck. That really
Mm.
was the thing. It's like I didn't want somebody to tell me that I was terrible, which might have been the truth. And I don't think I was necessarily terrible, but I needed adjustments. And I was, at the time, I had just come out of, 4 years of art school plus all of the curricular school before that. And I was kind of just over school at that point. And I was eager to work, and I didn't want to get in class after so many years of just being in school. I wanted a
Yeah.
chance to just try it. And so, yeah, absolutely, I was winging it. I wasn't even plugged into any communities. I wasn't asking anyone to review my materials. I wasn't even really listening to commercials or other samples of voiceover. I was just doing an idea of what I thought it was supposed to be. And you know what? I did learn a lot, though. I learned a lot about standing up for myself, about negotiating, about what was not working. The feedback I was getting, whether I liked it or not, was from my clients. And
Mm.
starting out on Fiverr was in some ways a really brutal place to start. I don't know how it is anymore because I don't work with them anymore, but at the time, Fiverr would often side with the buyer and not with the creator.
Ooh.
So I would deliver something and think it was pretty good and be proud of it and have followed all of the client's instructions. And then the client can leave these reviews, and the reviews determine your visibility on the site. So if you get a 4 out of 5 or a 3 out of 5, all of a sudden you kind of plummet in search results, or you
Mm.
plummet in visibility, and then your job opportunities go down. And when you ask them, like, hey, would you reconsider this? They don't have to reconsider it, and Fiverr doesn't have to remove the review. And all of a sudden your whole, career on that website is in somebody else's hands.
Yeah.
Um, so I learned a lot about, being good at customer service. I learned a lot about setting rates and setting boundaries and all the different various hats that you have to wear as a voice actor.
Hmm.
And I kind of did that really all by myself. I really did. I put homemade demos together. I did everything by myself. And it got to a point where doing things by myself was too hard. And I was frustrated at all of the outside factors around me. And I was sort of blaming the outside factors instead of going within and saying, what am I not doing as effectively as I could be? So I think, again, like, not to discount that part of my journey at all, because it was really important and it taught me that it's not weak to ask for help.
Mm.
But I think, truly winging it, as in like being on an island by yourself, was maybe not the best for me. I think I could have saved a lot of time if I had been more willing to ask for help.
I love that because the kind of just to call out a few of the things, it's that like what you said earlier, you humbled yourself and then started reaching out and getting feedback and getting coaching and getting all the things that by all means, anybody who we talk to, like I've seen it in our group, I've seen it across YouTube after YouTube of what I'm watching. It talks about don't start from the thing that Elena's talking about. Like, don't just throw yourself into Fiverr and bootstraps, lift up, get going, like self-made creator, all that stuff. But get the right coaching, get the right demos, wait until you're ready for things. And this one, I don't know. There are times within the voiceover community that I feel this is a little, I don't know, hot take on the journey to become a voice actor. You now are 100% the type of person who's inspirational, who is so many voice actors actually look up to you and see you in this place and they're just like, wow, because you are killing it and crushing it and like total the pop star is coming out like in the way you're doing things. So it's like you did start in that space and you call it stubbornness, but honestly, I feel like there's a degree of resiliency through the challenge of figuring things out. Um, and because I think I'm curious, when was the tipping point for you to finally say, or what motivated the tipping point to say, I need help in this? Because that's, I think, the point that a lot of newer voice actors really are looking for. Like, if I started in this and just got a little squirrely and said, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. This booth right here was me getting squirrely and just saying, I'm gonna do this because I can. What point was that tipping point for you to say, I need help?
I mean, I started asking for help when I moved back to the States in 2018 because I had a big motivator, which is I love my parents, but I don't want to live with them forever. I need to
Mm,
get out of here.
I feel
So
that.
I need to get more money to be able to do that. I was teaching English lessons online for $5 for 30 minutes of lessons. Um, what else was I doing? I think I was doing professional caroling, Christmas caroling at the time, and I was working in non-equity theater. I was just doing so much, and I wanted something to fall off. And so I did a business coaching with Rachel Elena, actually, and she gave me some advice, some pointers. She encouraged me to get into every pool, not just into one pool of audition, access. And I still was a little bit not stubborn, I guess, but I still hadn't gotten into like coaching yet.
Mm,
I think the big pivot point, even after I took her advice and I started booking more and I was able to go full time with voiceover, the big tipping point was the start of the pandemic, which I think a lot of people can relate to that. I was
yeah.
working in equity theater. I was doing 8 shows a week, and our show got shut down. We almost made it all the way to the end. We made it like up until the last 3 days. We got
Oh.
shut down. We were so close. Um, and I was already set up to do voiceover, and so it wasn't like I was a day one voiceover person on March 12th, 2020,
Mm,
but it was a natural pivot point because there was no theater and we knew there wasn't going to be theater for a while. And in fact, there ended up being no theater for me for 18 months. And if you had asked me at 22 if I ever anticipated taking an 18-month break from stage acting, I would have looked at you like you had five heads. That was never in my plan. I don't think a pandemic was ever in anyone's plan.
right.
So, uh, at that point, that's when I'd been doing it, I think, for about 4 or 5 years total. At that point, I reached out to J. Michael Collins to do my demo. We connected. We hit it off. We've had a great coaching working relationship ever since then. He's done many of my demos. And that I had resistance to doing that because I knew it was going to be expensive, but I also knew it was going to be really good. And I had it in my heart to start really moving up in this trajectory. And sure enough, I got my demo back. I sent it out to a handful of agents, which I had done many times before with my homemade demos and thinking they
Mm,
were going to be fine. And I had never gotten any responses. And I remember I got 3 agency bites in one day because of
wow.
JMC's demo that he did for me. And I was like, wow, okay, so this is what people are talking about. When you ask for help, when you hire a professional to make you show up in the way that you want to be reflected, um, isn't it amazing how people then perceive you, how you're trying to be perceived, which is somebody who's professional, somebody who's reliable, somebody who's versatile, who understands the market, who understands the assignment. And I think my materials were holding me back up until that point. I didn't realize that I wasn't presenting myself the way I saw myself. And so that investment was a really big tipping point, because from that point, I ended up starting on trial basis freelancing with my first call agent, who's DDO Chicago, and we've had, again, that was a big career tipping point as well. We've had a great working relationship for the last 3 years, and then they ended up repping me all across the board for on camera and theater and commercial, and as well as voiceover. So it was really, I don't want to, boil everything down to one moment, because I think in our careers, it's lots of little moments. There's not really a big break for most people. For most people, it's lots of little wins that then one of those wins ends up catching fire and the world finds out about them, but it doesn't discredit everything that came before that.
Yeah.
But I do think that, like, some of those steps, connecting with a really reputable demo producer and submitting to the right agency for me, were some big, big catalysts for me and for my journey.
For sure. It definitely sounds that way. And like it's cool because what I'm hearing a lot of is your confidence and your trust and belief in your own talent and skill was 100% there from your backgrounds, from your experiences, from your trainings, all of those things. And when that confidence met the investment in yourself and your career, like an actual financial investment, because J. Michael's cool and his stuff's like the Cadillac of demos, like it is, you're going to invest for that. But once that investment matched your confidence matched the investment, like boom, harmony, and then things can. And again, not to say it's one point, but like you were rubbing the sticks together for a while until floom fuego.
No, you're right. It's like J. Michael came in with like a lighter and was like, Psh, how about now? Like, it was like I was sitting out there like, come on, start a fire. And then it's like, you're right. So it absolutely is. It's an investment. And I was coming off the heels of a very expensive art school, program, going, I've already invested tens of thousands of dollars into this. Why should I have to pay for a $2,500 demo or whatever it was?
Yeah.
But the more I did start to listen to educational podcasts and listen to how other pros did it, this was the thing that was non-negotiable. And I knew I had to bite the bullet. And I also knew that, I didn't know what the market really wanted. And J. Michael and other really great producers make it their entire job to know what the trends are, to know what the current sound is, and to make these demos that sound like they are real commercials, And I will admit that I didn't have that reflected in my homemade demos, and I didn't really even know what that was. So again, it's like, isn't it amazing how asking for help from the right person can just turn your whole story around?
For sure. Absolutely. And it like you are walking your path, but it's nice to have somebody who's already walked to this path and can say, what you're doing, cool, good enough, but let me go ahead and guide you to the destination because I'm already there and I've been and I know, like, let me clear some of the brush for you.
That's why we have experts. We can't all be experts at everything, and thank God, because that would take, we don't all have 10,000 hours to put into everything. We're lucky if we have 10,000 hours to put into one thing. So, that's why, especially even as recent as this last year, I've gotten really granular about, okay, who is the expert on vocal combat? I'm going to go take with that person, with Darcy Smith. Who is the expert on video game acting? Or there's many of them. Like, who's one that I resonate with? Who's the expert on commercial? Who's the expert? And it's like, find the expert and make use of that, compensate them for their expertise. And then it's beneficial. It's symbiotic, for both of you. And I've kind of gotten addicted to asking for help and to getting into class and to becoming aware of what I don't know, because I've found that I actually thrive on a challenge and knowing, there's something I can do to make up for this area where I'm lacking. And that's actually kind of exciting. I've
Yeah.
been out of curricular school long enough now that I miss learning, and now I really love being in class.
I it echoes a lot of like the I am so excited when I reach that next milestone that then amplifies and motivates me to reach the next milestone and the next one. And I like the call out as well of like the getting into the vocal workout with the one the I can't remember his name now, but the dude who does the video game noises.
Oh, Darcy Smith,
Darcy
yes.
Smith, yes, he's Cincinnati, so I should remember his name. But um, like that, there's so much when I first started in this, at least kind of my story, and a lot of people who I talk to end up pursuing it and find themselves going a mile wide but only an inch deep because they can't get any
Mm.
traction or focus on any one thing. And finding those areas where it's like, okay, I could use some help here, I could use some help here, it gives you that potential to just go an inch wide but an absolute mile deep. And that, I think anybody would benefit from that. Like finding the thing and then driving that thing, and not to neglect everything else that's going on, but being able to go a mile deep, that that takes you places, and you've got to invest, you've got to train, you've got to, put the money where the mouth is on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're starting out, it's fine to go, what is it, a mile wide, inch deep, because maybe you don't know what you're going to be good at yet, and you don't know what you are compelled to do yet. Everybody thinks they want to do commercials and they think they want to do animation because those are the things we grow up hearing and those are the things we
Mm-hmm.
know. But maybe you're really, really good at corporate explainer and you just don't know that yet. Or maybe you're really good at audiobooks, or maybe you're really good at, I don't know, in-show narration. And you wouldn't know that unless you tried it. So I think I'm at the point, this will be my 8th year doing this now, where I am niching down and I'm starting to find those things that I'm really interested in and then seeking out those specific people so we can really get granular and really get good at those things. And then
Yeah.
also have these, of course I want to do animation. Of course I enjoy doing commercial and all those things, but so does everybody else. So what are the things that are going to be my bread and butter and my day-to-day work, and how can I be the best I can be at those things so that I'm competitive and that I can sustain myself on this career?
I love that you even mentioned the time frame you were in this. 8 years you have been at this. How many of those years did you feel it took for you to really be in this? I know the pandemic was a big like game changer for everybody, and that sounds like it took you to that first step of like saying this is the thing, the hustle, the work. But at what point in those 8 years, as somebody who is now in year two, did you feel like I'm in, like this is it?
I mean, I think I really started to trust my confidence really in this last year. And that sounds funny to say, doing it for so many years and not feeling totally confident until the 7th year. But even when I crossed that line of becoming full time, there were still so many things I didn't know, and there's still today so many things I don't know. Um, but I think that another big tipping point was getting plugged into community and seeing what other
Mm.
people were doing and getting more feedback and starting to fill in those gaps of, wow, maybe I don't understand, how to use isotope and how to visually be able to see a semi truck in my noise bed or whatever it is. Like there's I think an elevation aspect that comes from seeing what other people are doing, not in a comparative way, not in a, oh well, Andrew's doing this and ugh, why am I not doing that? I feel like I'm so behind. Like not in a way that is comparing our journeys to somebody else's, but I do think that I started to trust my confidence more this year when I realized that I could help people and people were asking me for help and I knew the answer for the first time. Or maybe I knew the answer for a while, but nobody had asked before, or people weren't asking in-depth, granular questions before. I mean, I can't tell you how many messages I get a week in Instagram or whatever. How do I get started in voiceover? How did you get started in voice acting? What's a good mic? Those types of questions. I was used to being asked that a lot,
Hmm.
but I wasn't used to people. finding my expertise valuable, I think, until I got plugged into this community and people had specific questions. And I was realizing that I knew the exact person to point them to, or I'd been there before so I could advise them on, well, I made that mistake and here's how I got through it. And all of that cumulatively definitely made me feel like, wait, I do know what I'm doing. I am an authority on this. And then when I
Yes.
would go into sessions and I would start recording and they would play it back, I would go, yeah, I am really good at this. I do know what I'm doing. And I think having that moment of awareness that you do know what you're doing is super rare because there's what is the scale? It's like unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence,
Yeah.
you know, and I think I was hanging out in somewhere between unconscious incompetence or conscious or unconscious competence for a really long time and going, yeah, I don't really know, I'm just out here. I don't really train that much. I don't know. But I knew more than I thought, and I wasn't really trusting that. And so like having a forum to be able to say, oh, I've been there before, let me help you through that, did something for my confidence for sure.
Yeah. And that's so like I 100% like I love how open you are with the wisdoms and experiences. Like your information is one I super duper value whenever questions pop out from anybody in our group. Like and you when you swing in and have any kind of answer, I'm like, I love hearing from everybody. And because I'm human and there's like biases that will always pop in, there are people who I wait to see their responses too. And you're amongst those people where it's like, I want to hear from everyone, but I also want to hear from Alaina on this, but I want to hear from everyone still. Like, I really, really, really do. And I genuinely mean that. It's just, there are some people who I know have, you know, taken the taken this industry like and been in it longer, deeper, wider, and are at a level that like I'm aiming for. So those like I always want to hear from the people who are ahead of me, the people who are behind me, and the people who are on the same level. And you're one of those people who I'm like, yes, absolutely. I can't wait to hear from that person.
Mm. I'm so glad it's been helpful, and I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, it's given so much back to me as well to be able to feel like my perspective is useful to other people and it matters. I think like feeling useful and feeling like other people need me is something that gives my life meaning. And there was like a short period of time when I moved back from the States where I was like fun employed. I had just come off 2 years of being a full-time performer
Fun
to
employed is
basically
such a
having
good
this
word.
unemployed. Yeah, like I basically had to start over because the casting directors in Chicago had moved on. They had to because I was just completely like out of the market and a lot of folks didn't remember me and I was really feeling sort of useless and that was really hard. And so having this community and having people ask more questions than I can possibly keep up with is beneficial to me too because it's like I feel invigorated when I can help somebody from making the mistakes that I made years ago and maybe save them some time.
Mm. I mean, I feel like kind of to the point of you getting help, like for me joining this group and getting the community pieces going, that was a definitely a trajectory changer that I'm kind of weaving in and out and now it's like okay, now I have a more defined path that I can follow. So for sure community has been that. And kind of continuing in this vibe of like winging it and leaning on community, have there ever been a time where you just sort of said, I have been winging this and it's not the thing because you obviously stuck with it on voiceover. But how did you, or did you have a metric to say like, this isn't it, or like winging it just wasn't enough?
um, there was never a time where I considered giving up voiceover or like it wasn't gonna work out or I was putting in more than it was giving back. That was never on my mind. Of all the artistic pursuits that I've pursued, voiceover has given the least, if any reason at all, to throw in the towel. Whereas, in theater, I've come to sort of accept in the last few years that it costs a lot more than it gives. And you know, voiceover has afforded me so many things, financial stability, flexibility and work-life balance so I can pay attention to my relationships and friendships and family. It's opened up career doors. I got to go to LA because of a voiceover thing I did, last December to have my name read at an award ceremony. It's like I feel so embraced by the voiceover community in a way that I don't want to say I wasn't in the theater community, but I think voiceover um, is so much more willing to take a chance on someone new and doesn't need that person to prove themselves time and time and time and time again before they
Mm.
give them a first shot. And certainly that's not a blanket statement. That's not always true. There are some really high stakes aspects of our industry that do require some trust building for sure, because there's a lot of money involved.
Yeah.
But by and large, I think it's much easier to start out in voiceover than it is to start out in theater or to sustain oneself in theater. So, like I said, I've gotten a lot more specific now about the types of theater projects that I'll take on because they do cost a lot. They cost a lot of time. Frankly, they cost money. They cost a lot on your physical body. They cost a lot to your relationships because the day off or days off that you get, you're probably sleeping and buying groceries.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, I think I'm actually really grateful for this facet of my career, and I'm choosing to believe that it's going to tug along the other lanes of my career and the other artistic pursuits that I have, because it's currently pulling ahead of those, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting to hear all of that. And I've heard this from a number of people within our group who have done theater and are now in voiceover, but it sounds like a lot. Like that could just weigh on you and drain in unique ways. And I'm also sure have elements of that fulfilling. I've been on stage before, and when I was on stage, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've come alive up here." And that's something I can't get in the same way in this booth, but
Yeah.
I get a degree. Like it scratches a little at the itch, but it never fully satisfies it.
Yeah. No, that's the internal war that I have with myself all of the time because I agree with you. There is no feeling like being on stage, being under those lights, getting to sing and being around people that you all put something together yourselves and here it is and people are interacting with it for the first and last time in that moment in that room with you and then it's gone. That's magic. I
Yeah.
love theater. It's always been it's my first love because there is nothing like it. And the way that I'm trying to reframe my thinking now, rather than, oh, like, it's been over a year since I was on stage again for the second time in this pandemic, I'm trying to reframe it like, isn't it nice that I've reached a point in my career that I can afford to be choosy about the theater opportunities that I take so that when I do take one, it's basically going to be a dream come true because that's what it's going to take to pull me out of this booth.
Yeah.
So that's the way I'm thinking of it now is that those opportunities may not be as plentiful as I had planned when I was 22. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay that plans change if they're changing to something better.
Oh, that's what an incredible just statement to make for maturity in general in anything, right? Like that's maturity.
Aw. Well, I think maturity comes from a lot of disappointment, to be honest. I think it comes from, being told no a lot or being told, hey, this isn't going to go the way you thought. Deal with it or make it work. Like either double down or find something else. And I know in my heart that if I wanted to put all of my time and resources into getting on Broadway within the next 3 years, I could do it. I 100% know I could do it. But I think the thing that's been hard and honest for me to admit in the last couple of years is that maybe I don't want to do it. And I've had to speak to my 20-year-old self, my 18-year-old self, my 14-year-old self and tell her, like, I'm not letting you down. This is something different and it's going to
Mm.
be better for us in a lot of ways. And we're not closing the door on that forever. But we have a full life now because of this. And I don't think I ever thought I would have that as an actor.
That was so freaking wholesome. I enjoyed the heck out of that description. That's ah ah little Andrew, are you listening? Ah.
you gotta sometimes talk to your younger self, because if you're not careful, you know, and you look at where you are and you look at where you thought you'd be by this point, you're going to see a discrepancy and you're going to interpret that as a failure. But like,
Mm.
maybe it's not. Maybe it's an improvement, you know?
I love that. So you have a number of moments where you have clearly felt those next level moments. Like you've already talked in depth about that. How do you celebrate wins now? Like, because it's clear, or at least I'm projecting probably a little bit, that you see yourself doing these amazing things and you see those moments. And that's so cool when it's like, I've got a big win here. And like that moment when it happens, how do you keep yourself motivated there? How do you reinvigorate yourself? How do you celebrate that?
And this is the hardest part for me. The hustling is not the hard part for me. The working hard, that's never been my problem. I've always been the hardest worker in the room. I just always have been a very productive person who works very, very hard. And the hard part for me is resting and trusting and celebrating. This is something that I work with my life coach, Andrea Fleming, name plug. She is amazing. She works with performers. She's also a performer. I've been working with her for over a year now, and I have reached so many goals just as a result of like changing the way I think about my goals, and think about myself. But one thing that she has me do every single week is we chart our wins and we share them with other people. We share them with each other and we celebrate them. And celebrating doesn't have to be like, I went out and bought a Ferrari. It can just be like, for me, like little things, like I went out and got a latte from Panera and I enjoyed it in the unusually warm weather that we had in Chicago, and that was nice. Or I got a burrito from Soul Taco and I watched The Bachelor, and that's how I celebrated. Like that is important, because I think the danger is we start to um, turn our wins into losses, because we
Mm.
say, yeah, I did that, but it wasn't what I really wanted. It wasn't this other goal that I have blinders on about. So therefore, it's not really a win. So I also stole this idea from Sarah Sikora, who suggested that we make a spreadsheet of all our career goals and then write down the date that we achieved that goal. And
Oh.
I also added to that, and I've been writing down wins that weren't necessarily goals I set out to achieve, but they happened anyway. And then the date that it happened, and then another column for how I made it happen, so that I can't say, oh, it was just a fluke, it was an accident. I don't know, it was random.
That's a great column to include in there, because I think that's I I I do celebrate wins sometimes a little too much because it's like I deserve a chocolate. I'll have a second one, maybe a third. Like I do that to myself sometimes because it's like I feel so good. I'm just gonna keep on in celebration mode.
Yeah, do it.
But the appreciation of how did what I do knock this domino over? Maybe it was something that was secondary, but that secondary couldn't happen if I didn't start the dominoes already. Um,
Hmm.
I love that. I need to consider how to implement that into my own celebration. And everything you're saying is so true. And every single person I've interacted with up to this point in these interviews, I love that I included this question that I want to ask each of my guests, because creatives are so have the capacity and space to be incredibly hard on themselves. We are required to self-direct in here, so we're constantly picking apart our own performances and how can I do this better, different, and the temptation is to convince yourself subconsciously maybe that you're not good enough. And all of the creatives I've interacted with so far have been like, celebration's hard. I don't take rest a ton, so maybe I will rest a bit from time to time. And like, and I love that this just to in every single person, much like yourself, when you start describing it, you're like, no, no, this is important. And I also love, based on your story, I'm saying a lot of things I love here because you're saying such invigorating things. The kind of following the theme of asking for help, even in celebrations, you went to people like Sarah Sikora and your life coach to find these tips and tricks to help you celebrate. And there's no shame in asking for help. And how do I celebrate things? How do I do that in a way that's invigorating?
Yeah, I think also just like having smaller cohorts of accountability partners has been
Mm.
really, really important for me. I have a group chat with Jenna and Morgan, also from our same group, and we text each other about highs and lows all the time. And a really, really valuable and true friend is there to celebrate your wins and mourn your losses. And
Mm-hmm.
we do that for each other. We support each other through challenges that we deal with in our day-to-day careers. And we also champion each other when we reach major goals, even if it means that one of us beat the other one out for a job. Like, we're still celebrating that. And,
Yeah.
if I didn't get it, I'm so glad that you did. And I think that's really special. And I would advise anyone listening to find, if you can, that supportive group of two or three other people that really do have your best interests at heart and are able to be secure enough in their own careers that it doesn't cost them anything to celebrate you.
Mm. I love that. Yeah. You need your squad. Everybody needs their team, their squad, their people, those people who are just in with you ringside because you're fighting, they're fighting their own fights, but they're ready to tap you on the shoulder and just be with you. And yeah, that's motivations become so different when you know you've got people backing you up. And like the way you get there is you move with a little bit more strength when you've got people in your corner. And love it. I love it.
Yeah, especially when those people don't let you settle too. Like, because if they wouldn't take that job for themselves, then they're going to tell you, you deserve better than that too.
Mm.
And I think that the other side of celebration is accountability in a really, really good friendship, right? So it's like, yeah, I'm psyched for you and you can do better,
Yeah.
So we will send our self-made samples to each other, our work in progress demos to each other. We will send auditions, which is really vulnerable, to each other, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
give honest feedback that nobody takes personally, and you're free to disagree with and do whatever you were going to do anyway as well. But having that level of vulnerability with one or two people that you really trust, I think, is really important in this career.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got to give trust to get trust, and you have to get trust to keep moving forward. Like, that's
Mhm.
for sure. I want to stay respectful of your very busy schedule, which I'm so crazy, like genuinely from the bottom of my heart, appreciative that you took time to come and talk with little old me in this space at this time. Uh,
Stop.
but this is your chance within this to commercial platform yourself. How can people stay in touch with you? What are some things you're excited about? I keep saying this in every single one of these things. Like, if you ever watch the show Hot Ones, it's like this camera, this camera, this camera. Tell the people what you got going on in your life. Like,
Oh, wow. I'm
what's good
like,
with you?
oh no, I only have one. I do direct to camera for this. No, that's weird. Everyone feels super uncomfortable whenever I do that. I'm not going to do that. Um, you can visit me online at my website, alainawis.com, ALAINAWIS. I feel like I need to spell it because I have a lot of uncommonness in my names. I'm on Instagram at Believe, BELLEIEVE. Don't ask me why I choose these hard to spell names. And I'm on Twitter at Alaina Wis again. Love to connect with folks facing the day-to-day, ups and downs of this career, and always down to make more friends.
Again, I can't thank you enough. This was so great. Yeah, yeah. I'm
Oh,
so bad at send offs with these things because I'm just like, this is. I feel so great about the people in my life who are jumping in on these things, and I'm excited.
oh no.
Yeah, it's great. Nah, that's
Well,
all I can
thank
say.
you so much for having me. We don't have to do a send off then. We can just like fade out this ending where we're talking about like, what are you gonna have for lunch later?
Oh my gosh, I'm thinking I'm gonna have maybe some rice with some eggs, fried eggs on top, and some
Oh,
onions.
that sounds actually amazing. That's like a very common thing that we make in this house. We'll do like a little bit of light sauce.